Okay, part one, vocabulary definitions, alphanumeric code, radio code system that combines letters and numbers, which may include officer call signals or vehicle license plate numbers, page 166. Behavioral threat assessment and management, BTAM, a proactive investigative process used to identify, assess, and manage the risk of targeted violence posed by an unidentified or identifiable person, page 181. Civil standby, an incident where an officer maintains the peace through officer presence while serving a court order or responding to a call for service, page 166. Concealment, an object or group of objects that creates a visual barrier between an officer and a threat, but may not stop a projectile, page 160. Contact officer, the primary officer in the call who is responsible for leading the approach and handling all communication with the suspect, including commands and interviews, page 176. Cover, anything that creates a bullet-resistant barrier between an officer and a threat, protecting the officer from incoming gunfire, page 159. Cover officer, the backup officer who is strictly responsible for officer safety concerns at the scene, observing the interaction and watching for hazards, page 176. Deep corners, corners that cannot be visually cleared from a doorway and must be checked first upon entry into a room, page 203. Dispatchers, public safety telecommunicators, PSTs, non-sworn personnel who operate the radio and telecommunications systems, serving as the hub of contact for patrol officers by transmitting calls, receiving requests, and broadcasting information, page 165. Exotic animal, any animal that is not native to Florida, such as pythons, parrots, and monitor lizards, page 189. Extradition, the surrender of a fugitive to another state or nation that has jurisdiction, page 170. Fatal funnels, narrow spaces that restrict movement, typically doorways, hallways, and windows, which present high risk during a building search, page 203. Florida Crime Information Center, FCIC, a database housed at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, that provides statewide information on people and property, driver's licenses, wanted, missing persons, and criminal histories, page 168. HIT, an exact match found in a database query regarding a person or property of interest, page 170. Injunction, a court order that requires a person to do or refrain from doing specific acts, such as having no contact with a former spouse or a specific victim of domestic violence, page 196. National Crime Information Center, NCIC, a national database maintained by the FBI that contains records of stolen, abandoned, and recovered property, as well as wanted or missing person files from all 50 states and territories, page 168. Numeric or 10 code, a radio communication system that uses the number 10 before other numbers to represent specific law enforcement activities, page 166. Observation, the act of recognizing an occurrence using your senses by noticing people, things, or circumstances, page 159. Perimeter, an area of containment surrounding the site of an incident used to restrict access or secure a scene, page 205. Phonetic alphabet, a radio communication system that uses the letters of the English alphabet to identify letters in voice communication. Example A equals alpha, page 166. Querying, the process of gathering information by entering or running a search in a database for law enforcement purposes, page 168. Radio protocol, the customs and regulations utilized for constructing and transmitting radio messages, including codes, signals, and plain talk, page 166. Roll call, a brief operational meeting that officers attend before starting a shift, providing information about current issues to keep in mind while on patrol, page 157. Self-help repossession, a process where a creditor takes possession of collateral after a borrower defaults without a court order. Permissible under Florida law only if it can be done without a breach of peace, page 195. Signals, a radio communication system that uses the word signal before numbers to convey specific meanings or incidents, page 166. Situational awareness, the ability to pay attention to what is going on around you, requiring you to stay aware of your environment so you remain alert and able to respond appropriately, page 161. Suspicious activity, any activity that is abnormal for a specific time of day in a particular area, page 158. Targeted violence, incidents of violence involving an identifiable person of concern, a perpetrator who possesses the intent and capability to cause physical harm to an identifiable target, an intended victim. Page 180, tunnel vision, the narrowing of the field of view during a stressful event such as a vehicle pursuit, foot chase, or armed confrontation. That's page 161. Writ of replevin is a court order that allows a creditor to take possession of collateral after a borrower defaults. That's page 195.